This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Well, we are in the middle of doing a study in 1 Samuel. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slide here and we will look at this. But we're in 1 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 through 4. So that's all we're going to be doing today. This could be a pretty short lesson, or this could be a longer lesson. It depends on how talkative we get and how many questions we have and stuff. But we're in 1 Samuel 7, 1 through 4. And I'm going to also pull it up on my phone just because I like having a couple of different translations here. But if you remember, last time that we met in 1 Samuel chapter 7, hey guys, come on in. We got plenty of food over there if y'all want some food. But so we're in 1 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 through 4. But last time we were in 1 Samuel chapter 6, verses 1 through 21. And when we did that, it ended with the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, going back over to Israel and not being in the presence of the Philistines. So it went back to Israel, and they were excited and they enjoyed it and they celebrated and they were overfilled with joy. But it ends with some people doing something they shouldn't have done. They opened up the Ark of God, they looked inside of it, and like 70 people passed away, because that's not how you're supposed to treat the Ark of God. And so the people that had it, they were like, oh, get rid of this, get this out of here. And they sent for someone to come get it, and they came and got it, and they took it away. So that's where we're starting the story tonight, is when they came and got it. So this is 1 Samuel 7, 1 through 4. It says, so the men of Kiriath Jearim came to get the ark of the Lord. They took it to the hillside home of Abinadab and ordained Eleazar, his son, to be in charge of it. The ark remained in Kiriath Jearim for a long time, 20 years in all. During that time, all Israel mourned because it seemed the Lord had abandoned them. Then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you are really serious about wanting to return to the Lord, get rid of your foreign gods and your images of Ashtaroth. Determine to obey only the Lord, then he will rescue you from the Philistines. So the Israelites got rid of their images of Baal and Ashtaroth and worshiped only the Lord. I'm going to go ahead and read it out of a different translation, because these translations are quite different sometimes. So, and there's some in a different translation that I think might be a little bit more helpful. But I'm going to read it out of the ESV version right now. And it says, and the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. And they consecrated his son Eleazar to have charge of the ark of God. From the day the ark was lodged at Kiriath Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. And Samuel said to the house of Israel, if you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you, and direct your heart to the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. So the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashtaroth, and they served the Lord only. So just looking at that, we're going to break through that and just look at these 4 verses, and just one at a time. But right here, 1 Samuel 1. So the men in the end of the last chapter, they cried out and they said, hey, come get this, come get it. you know. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came and got it. They got the ark of the Lord, and they took it back to the house of Abinadab. And we really don't know who Abinadab is that much, except that he's the one that had the ark of the God for so long. And they ordained Eleazar, his son, to be in charge of it. Because if you remember, the priestly line are the people that were supposed to be in charge of it. And that priestly line pretty much ended when in chapter 2, when Phineas and can't remember Phineas's brother's name, but when they were killed in the battle because of the sins of their life and what they were doing. So they ordained Eleazar to be in charge of it. And in this second verse, in 1 Samuel 2, is what I want to look at a little bit here. It says in this translation, it says, the ark remained of Kiriath Jearim for a long time, 20 years in all. During that time, all Israel mourned because it seemed that the Lord had abandoned them. And then this other translation, it says, from that day, the ark was lodged at Kiriath Jearim a long time past, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. I like that, the second one, more than the one that's on the screen or the one that I read the first time, because it kind of just tells their attitude about it. So what happened here, it wasn't that people were getting sad and they were lamenting and thinking that God left them or God abandoned them because the Ark of the Covenant came back and it was this grudge. What they did is they left the Ark of the Covenant out there at Kiriath Jearim for 20 years. They left it out there for 20 years. And when you think about where it was, Abinadab was probably a farmer or some sort of, rancher, or had sheep, whatever it was. He had a farm. And if you would like to think about where the Ark of the Covenant was on his land, it was probably in the shed or in the barn. It was just kind of in the back. It was just out there. Nobody was paying attention except for his son Eleazar. And really, it was just there. The whole nation of Israel just kind of put God in the shed or in the barn or in the back of the house, for 20 years. And they worshiped God. This was the main place of worship where the people of Israel came to worship and offer sacrifices. It's centered around this Ark of the Covenant. And for 20 years, the Ark of the Covenant just sat back there. It just sat back there. And in this, it says that Israel mourned because it seemed that the Lord abandoned them. And this other one says, the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. I like that better. They began to become aware. They lamented. They mourned because God was not in their presence anymore. For 20 years, they made this decision that God was to be behind the barn, in the field, in the shed. And then after that 20 years, and we really don't know if it was exactly 20, that might be kind of just a way they say a long time, 20 years. But I read somewhere that it could have been up to 70 years that the ark was there at Abinadab's. But they began to be mournful. They began to lament because of the way they were treating God, and because things weren't going well for them. In the 10 Commandments, one of the 10 Commandments is that you shall have no other gods before me, and you shall worship the Lord your God. And they began to worship other gods. And over this 20 to 70 year period, whatever it might have been, they began to worship other gods, and it began to not go so well for them. If we look at verse 3 here, it says, then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you are really serious about wanting to return to the Lord, get rid of your foreign gods your images of Astaroth. Determined to obey the Lord, and he will rescue you from the Philistines. And I like this other one. It says, if you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away your foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you, and direct your heart to the Lord, and serve only him, and he will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines. So to give your whole heart to God, and that's something that I wanted to talk about just a second. What does it mean to love to be wholehearted about something? Have you ever been wholehearted about something? Like if Jody, if I were to ask you, are you wholehearted about something, or do you like something wholeheartedly, or do you follow something wholeheartedly? What is it? If you were to ask me, I would say I probably am wholeheartedly following Texas Tech athletics. Good, bad, win, lose. I wholeheartedly love Texas Tech, and that. And when in this and so we could probably say that about a lot of stuff. I wholeheartedly love food. I wholeheartedly love my family, my wife. And God really wants us to follow him wholeheartedly. In the New Testament, it says, they say, hey, Jesus, what's the most important commandment? And he says, hey, you can sum them all up in this. You may love the Lord your God with some of your heart, some of your mind. Is that right? No, that's not right. It's you may love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. God, he really isn't fair when it comes down to this. He wants you to give your whole heart to him. He wants you to be fully committed to him. He wants you to give everything that you have. He wants you to love him with your whole heart. And that's what we're talking about here in this text, is being wholehearted. And what happened with the folks when the Ark of the Covenant was there, and they put it on the back 40, they put it behind the house, they put it out of sight, is that they no longer were wholeheartedly following God. They were probably following God maybe 0%, 10%. They weren't even thinking about it. They were beginning to worship other gods. And I guess that's one of the questions that I have for us today is, do we love the Lord, or do we give our whole heart to the Lord? Are we wholeheartedly committed to God? And that's what Samuel is saying here. Samuel is saying, determined to obey only the Lord, and then he will come and rescue you. These foreign gods that they were beginning to worship, and that they were beginning to follow, were gods that the other nations around. So it was Baal and Asherah. And these, if you've read the Bible, you've heard about Baal a lot. With Elijah, he got in a showdown with the priest of Baal once. And then Asherah, you hear about Asherah poles. And it's, so Baal, and this is very blunt and very straight. This is what these two gods were. Baal and Asherah were fertility gods, and they were gods that people worshipped. They worshiped them, thinking that if they worship them, they will be blessed. They'll have more kids. They'll have more crops. They'll have their sheep will have more lambs. It's to prosper them, and they would worship these gods. So Baal was the male god, and Asheroth was the female god. So, and they kind of went hand in hand. And they had this big statue of Baal, and he's kind of standing there like this with his arms up like this, and he's made out of iron, metal, something like that. And they would start a fire in his belly underneath him, and they would go and they would worship there. Asheroth was these poles. They had these Ashereth poles that they would place at different places. A lot of times they'd place them like on the highest point of the area, like on top of a hill, and they were and so the way that they worshipped Ashereth and Baal is that everybody would go to the Ashereth pole, and essentially they would have a big orgy, or they would have sex with everybody. And because they were the fertility gods, so they would all go up there and have this big sexual encounter. And that's the way they worshipped Ashtaroth. And what happened is when all this time they're having this sex up there, and all this is going on, what happened is that people would get pregnant, and they would be unwanted pregnancies, and that they didn't know what to do with the babies. So what came hand in hand with all these extra babies showing up is that, and you read about this in other parts of the Bible, but they would offer babies as sacrifices to Baal. And they would start, this is really gross, they would start a fire in the belly of Baal, and it would get so hot that it would be glowing and hot on his arms, and they would place the baby on the arms of Baal, and the baby would squirm, and as it squirmed, it would roll down into the fire of Baal. And that's why when you read through scripture and it talks about, other nations offering babies, offering their children to Baal, and how detestable that is. But that's the kind of stuff that Israel got involved in at this time, in worshiping Asheroth and Baal. I mean, it was horrible, heinous, really bad stuff. I can't imagine having a kid and burning it to a god. And throughout history, you see people do that. I mean, it's really, really sad.
Isn't that what they do with abortion now? Inconveniently murder the babies?
Yeah, well, I don't think that's in worship of, I don't think that's in worship of a god. They're not offering that as worship to a god, but yeah, it's just as heinous. It's very bad.
I mean, you're still killing a baby, and you're killing them in a inhumane way.
Yeah, they're definitely killing a baby, but this was a way that they were worshiping a god. I think.
Well, I mean, aren't they worshiping the devil when they're doing that?
No, I think they're being selfish. I think they're being selfish. And
well, no, I mean, like the doctor. I mean, how could you kill a baby like that?
Well, they just don't have the same worldview as some other people. They're not, but I don't think they're having a worship service in that clinic where they're offering a sacrifice to a god. It is very bad, and I'm very pro-life and will always be pro-life. But I think this is they're both bad, but this is another level of violating God. I mean, you're putting another God in front of God and worshiping him. And then on top of that, you're putting part of his creation and offering part of his creation as a sacrifice to another God. So, I mean, it's really heinous. So while we don't specifically do that kind of stuff today, but I do think that we have gods of prosperity that we put in front of God. We want to have the good job. We want to have the good stuff. We want to, we daydream about, oh, if I could just have this job, if I could just have that house, or, oh, I really like that new car, or really, and while it looks different, I do think that we have problems, myself included today, of having other gods in front of the Lord, to where I think about, I don't wholeheartedly put my attention on God. I put maybe 50% or 75, or on a really good day, 95. But then there's a part of me that I'm still not wholehearted. I'm divided, and I'm concerned about other things. But they were in a really, really bad place, to say the least. We'll get back to the text here. But yes, but abortion is bad, and I agree 100% with all of that. But determined to obey only the Lord is what it says in verse 3. So what they're doing here is what was leading up to this is they were saddened about what was going on. They were full of anguish. The verse right in front of this, it says they mourned or they lamented. And then what happens after we mourn and we lament, we realize that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Then we determine that we want to obey the Lord. And in this case, he's going to deliver them from the Philistines. And in other cases, in our lives, he delivers us from other things that are bothering us or other things that are bearing down on us. Then verse 4, it says, so the Israelites got rid of their images of Baal and the Asheroth, or the Asheroth poles, and they worshiped only the Lord. So, and I think that's a beautiful, beautiful ending there, because, you know, we've gone from where the priests were having sex in the tabernacle and, you know, taking the sacrifices that were intended for God. That's what all we looked at in chapter 1 and chapter 2. And it's just been this really bad thing. And now we've gotten to the point to where the people of Israel have decided that they are going to worship only the Lord. And they've gotten rid of their other images of Baal and Ashtoreth. And they're going to do it wholeheartedly. So I think there's some things, when we look at the word wholeheartedly, I think there's some things that prevent us from doing that. Let me see if I can turn this off. But I think there's some things that prevent us from doing worshiping God wholeheartedly. I really think that in America right now, especially with young people, but I think with just all ages, it's almost popular to not be wholeheartedly committed to anything. You know, you know, if you look at marriage, you look at young people now from 18 to age 29, as the years go on, that age group, that demographic, more and more and more of them are willing to not be committed to another person in marriage. And it's just something that we're afraid of commitment. I heard somebody speak once in the past year or so that America, young people, America in general, are commitment averse, that we're just, there's something about not wanting to commit to certain things. And I think there's a lot of reasons why we are committed. We have commitment aversion, and why people don't go wholeheartedly into stuff. I think one of them is we have so many choices, right? We have so many choices nowadays.
So many things to worship. You got money, you got
Football,
yeah, you got
the Dallas Cowboys on a good year, you know, or 1995.
I'd like to say that the most wonderful and fulfilling part of my life was being committed to my wife. That
Yeah,
was the best part of life, was being committed to someone.
yeah. I think commitment, and I think the commitment, what Lonnie shared was that the highlight of his life was in that commitment that he had with something. So, and I agree. I would say that the commitment that I have with Jody is definitely one of the top 10 highlights of my life. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it definitely is. You know, but also, I think my biggest struggle in that is that sometimes I put Jody in front of God, and I rely on Jody more than I do on God. And I'm more wholeheartedly committed to Jody than I am wholeheartedly committed to God. And that's something that we have to balance, and we have to really keep an eye on. But as Richard was saying, there are so many different choices. And I think if we feel like we commit ourselves to one thing, we're not going to be able to do something else. Go ahead,
but
Richard.
you take my son Chris, he should have been here tonight whenever he's invited and stays at home playing video games.
Yeah,
You know, he's on the computer. He's more involved with that than he is with getting his life straightened out. You know?
Yeah. So we have.
I'm glad that Lacey and Doug are showing up because she's trying to do something with her life to get her life straight.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference on whether you're here with God or if you're at home just staying on a phone or.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Or whatever.
I wonder
So-
if part of it too has to do with we're such a disposable society as well.
What Jody says, if we're such a disposable society. So break that down to them.
Like, I mean, anything can be thrown away. You
Yeah.
know? And that goes with relationships. And
Yeah.
things, too.
Relationship, anything. And I think with our phones, I mean, we have the world at our fingertips now, which is really weird. You know, when I was in 1990, 1992, when I was at Texas Tech, I mean, it was a lot of work to figure out what was going on in other parts of the world, or to read. I mean, we had to go to the library and check books out and actually, look at, and now you can figure out anything. You have access to just about anything. And so the possibilities now for what you can interact with, it's unbelievable now.
There's so many cheating apps on here now. I mean, you can just put out a profile and you can meet up with somebody you've never even met before.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, yeah. So I think just the sheer number of choices, we need to be winding this down, but I think the sheer number of choices is something about us not wanting to wholeheartedly commit. And I think if you look at the church over the last 20 years, 30 years, I mean, people are averse to committing themselves to a church and committing themselves to a community, to where they want to follow God. And it's just something new. Also, I think people, really the only way that you can get to know one another is really to get to talk and sit down and spend time with each other. And this is so fake. The phone is so fake, right? And texting, Facebook.
the good thing about that.
What's
is it
that?
gives you time that if you're going to respond to somebody, you got time to think about your answer before you put that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You have time to think about your.
Think before you speak.
Yeah, think
I know,
before.
I have to deal with that a lot.
But I think one of the problems with this is that so many Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, people are so committed to making themselves look good that they're not being real. Like on Instagram, the only pictures that the kids or people put on Instagram are the really good ones, and it's almost like they're building this fake persona up of my life's perfect, everything's going well. All you ever see are this picture. Pull up the picture from the second to the last day when we were out of town last
You
week.
got that photo app that can improve your.
There's
photo.
only so good you can make some pictures.
Photo.
Do what?
Right.
There's only so good you can make some pictures.
Yeah, they're only so good I can make some pictures, but
This
they
is as
also
good
have
as it
filters.
gets.
They have filters and all this that you can make yourself look better. And I think what happens is when you actually meet the person in person, you're like, you're not who you said you were. So I don't trust you, So there's trust issues in this. We got so many choices.
I don't know what you're
Just
talking
any
about.
picture from when you and I did a selfie. Let me
That's a
see.
good example for you. My ex, she was with another guy, and she was with me whenever she got with him, and then he never trusted her, and they got married. He never trusted her, and he passed away.
Yeah.
And he never trusted her throughout the whole marriage. And she goes, I don't know why. And I said, well, look how you got with
Yeah.
him. How could you expect him to trust you with what you did?
Yeah. So you don't trust, and it's because you're only getting a glimpse of it. So here's a picture that y'all can see. This was last week. Jody and I had the opportunity to go to a beach for a day, and that's me standing in the water and Jody taking a selfie. So if we were to send you that picture last week, you ought to have gone, oh, they have the perfect life and they're having such fun. They're at the beach. The reality is she fell down literally short time after that and broke her tailbone. She was in tears. She was weeping. I had to carry all the luggage. She couldn't bend over to pick anything up. It really was kind of miserable and stressful and trying to get through the airport on the way home with her. She couldn't walk. I mean, she's walking much better now than she was 4 days ago, but she couldn't walk. And we were having to wait for the cart guy to come to give her a ride to make the next plane. And we thought we were going to make it, but nobody sees that. And they think that, oh, it was a perfect trip. No, it wasn't. I really didn't want to be there that day. If I could take that day away and her not break her tailbone, and that, I mean, sign me up all day. But that's the way it is with technology and everything, is we don't really get to know each other. And when we don't get to know each other, we don't get to trust them. And so it's this commitment aversion thing. So we turn that all around to our text today, is that we have to spend time with God, get to know God, allow God to trust it, instead of having the Ark of the Covenant or the place of worship or what you need to be doing behind the house, in the shed or whatever, put it in the front of your life and let it be what you're wholeheartedly following and what you're wanting to do. So we went a little bit over today, but so there's all those things, but we're getting to a real good part of the story. I think chapter 7 of 1 Samuel is really good. I love the way it started out with them saying that, hey, we're wholeheartedly following you, committing themselves. They got rid of the gods. So the questions for me is, where's God? Is God in front of us at the forefront? Are we loving him with our whole heart, mind, soul, strength, everything that we have? Or is he in the back? Is it 100%, 75%, 50%, 25%, 0%? What is it, and what can we do? And then the second question is what are the Asheroths and Baals in our life that we're the idols in our life that we're worshiping? Is it our job? Is it our football team? Is it whatever it is? What is it that we're putting more attention to than we are God, and what do we need to do about it? Do y'all have any questions? Anything in here?
On verse 2, it says the ark remained at
Kerith Jearim.
Right. So did all the plagues and everything stop?
Yeah, they all stopped. Yeah, they stopped when they got to Israel, but the people, remember, they opened it up to look in it, and 70 of them died. But
they start worshiping other idols and stuff here, where the ark's at. So
no, the ark was over there, and Israel, the people were. That's just a farm. It's like some little farm outside past the wind farms out in Borden County. That's where the Ark of the Covenant is.
Okay.
And over here is where all the people are and where they're worshiping other gods and stuff. It's still kind of in the same area,
Right.
Same country, but they're not paying attention to that ark over there. They're paying attention to all the stuff over here.
That's why I was wondering why God didn't put his wrath on them as well.
Yeah. Well, in a way, they brought it on themselves.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you think if they were to find the Ark of the Covenant, that people would be stupid enough to look in it today thinking that, oh, that was all myth?
Most
Yeah.
certainly.
I think people would be stupid enough to do it, but Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, they opened it up and looked at it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they drank from the cup, Jesus's cup, the chalice.
Well, they did both. Yeah.
They did both.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen the
They
movie,
did
but
both.
yeah, they did
You're
both.
referencing two different movies.
Oh, am I referencing? I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've watched Indiana Jones, but
Yeah.
That's why they came up with curiosity killed the cat, because people are just
Yeah.
too curious. They want to know.
yeah. But and part of that, Lonnie, is when Jesus came, he looked over at where the Ark of the Covenant was, and he says, I'm going to tear that down and rebuild it in 3 days. So the presence of God is no longer in the Ark of the Covenant. The presence of God through Jesus' Spirit is now in us. So I don't know if it would have the same impact as it did back then, when that was the actual vessel of where God kind of hung out and where people worshiped him, because we're now that vessel. And
So it'd be safe to melt it down and cash it in?
I'll let you try that, Lonnie. I'm not going to give you permission or anything.
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, any questions or comments or anything that